she can follow along. Yvonne, do you have the agenda packet with you? Available?
Yes.
Okay. Otherwise, we're gonna try and share. Cool. Let's go ahead and start, I guess, by roll. So the roll call. Brian Gale here. Carly Wright
Here.
Roger Williams here. Alicia Bay
here.
Yvonne Foots
Here.
And Kathleen is absent today. And today is Monday, May 20th, 2024. And it's what about 3:11 in the afternoon. Just getting started with the subcommittee meeting for the Cultural Tourism Promotion Advisory Board subcommittee meeting. So kind of picking up where we left off. Hopefully everyone's gone through the minutes. There's action items or recorded information about the discussions that took place. We were going through the grant application manual last time. Were there any questions at this time about the grant manual and the discussions that took place last time? No. All right. Probably should have somebody make a motion to adopt the minutes and the agenda.
A motion to adopt the minutes and the agenda.
Second.
Seconded. Motion made by Chair Ryan Gale and seconded by Carly Wright. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No?
Do I get a vote?
Sure.
Okay.
Welcome.
You're part of the subcommittee.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
great. Sure. Yes.
Okay, unanimous.
Did Yvonne vote? Oh, yay. Did you want to approve the minutes, Yvonne, and the agenda?
Approved.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. All right. So kind of the next steps, before we get back into things, I kind of wanted to go over the results from the survey.
Mhm.
So I thought it was kind of interesting. We got 24 responses this year to the review.
I think that's probably the most we've ever received for responses.
I think so, actually.
Yeah,
I think
like-
last time was 16.
That's like about 40 to 50%, right? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah. I mean, it was a good turnout. One thing that's different from last time to this time was that I stretched it from 5 to 10 because I wanted to have an idea of how was your experience from the years past, TOT application process. I wanted to find out in 1 to 5, you really clump things together. And with 10, it was able to spread it out a little bit more so you could see that the majority of the people, were fine with the process.
Which is kind of interesting that 5 people weren't yet 41%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That doesn't
like
make sense on that.
those ratios, I don't know, that just doesn't seem.
correct. You're right, it doesn't seem correct, that ratio.
Yeah.
On that pie
It's
chart.
sort of
What was the
asking in a
other
different
challenge?
way. This is sort of a binary yes or no kind of question versus like, can you know?
Well, I take that back. So I guess the first one is, how was your experience with this year's TOT grant application process? And the majority of people said they were fine with it. And there was only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people that said that they, it wasn't good. Nothing needs to change. The range was, everything was great, don't need to change much. Otherwise, if it was bad, they would
Yeah.
something to change.
Yeah.
And then down here, was the application a challenge for your organization to complete? And
Well, yes, still a majority, but the difference,
it's
heavier weighted in the.
Yeah,
It's,
it was a
the weight-
challenge.
the weighting
There's
don't
something
match.
in that,
Yeah,
without more information.
But it could be hard for you to do, but you think think the process is fine, but for your organization, maybe you don't have the resources or the experience, so it's a challenge.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, both those things can be true at the same time.
And thanks for the clarification, because I know Yvonne and Wish, you guys were part of the survey, so
Yes.
you guys you're part of this, the answer group here. So from your perspective, how you answered that question helps us understand how you read that question. But I think, you know, if there's a challenge, I mean, you're 50-50, you know, there should be somewhat of a challenge, but not too easy.
Yeah.
Then we get into the explanations side of things. If it was a challenge, please explain what you encountered. So there was 11 responses to this question. And let me see, there's actually, I have a spreadsheet that showed this a little bit better. Is it in there? Yeah, okay. I probably have to share this with Yvonne. Because Yvonne, you're probably still seeing the survey, right? Or was?
Now I'm back to the room.
Okay. And now you should have the survey set, the spreadsheet.
Yes.
Okay. So here's the 24 answers or 24 responses. And then was the application challenge? Yes, 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 yes. 10 out of 24 responses were yes. And then, you know, the other 14 were like, no, it wasn't that much of a challenge. If they said yes, then there's the responses.
okay,
And there was one in here, that's why there was 11 responses. One, it said no, but it says, it was pretty straightforward, in my opinion. And then the others yes. So when you get down into those questions about whether it was a challenge or not, the first one is the application is long and erroneous. Across philanthropy, best practices for grant making organizations suggest shorter applications and multi-year grants. Allow small organizations to spend more time on programming. Heard that before. There was not a process of the right clarification and support of my cultural language.
wait, can we pause for a second, go back to that first one. We can't do multi-year grants though, right?
Correct.
No.
Okay, so this is something that we probably should put a note in there somewhere that says we can't do multi-year, like, because every year they're gonna say, we want multi-year, and every year we're gonna say, but we can't do that.
Yeah.
And if we said it somewhere before, then they would just be out there.
Yeah, in the past, we had said like we would look into it and explore the possibility,
Right,
but
and we did, and learned we can't,
Correct.
so,
so should we make it
It's just
official?
getting that response back to the
right,
person.
yeah,
So maybe we could, like make something official saying like at this point in time, we are no longer pursuing multi-year grants as an option. So,
yeah, I just think something should be,
yeah, made it official.
yeah, so then,
So the recommendation is to respond back to the individual, let them know that multi-year grants is not
an
available.
option, yeah. Okay, sorry.
No, that's great, perfect, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
We're going through the survey with the feedback and wanting to identify if there's something in here, you know, out of those 5 that.
Yeah, and then on the language thing, obviously, we do have an issue with our application needs to be available in both, which also means we need to have people who are either translating or making it accessible, because it's supposed to be something we offer across the board, and
I thought it was available in Spanish and English only, not.
So previously, before it went online, we had a Spanish version and we had an English version.
And we still
And now that it's online,
do have.
it is the web to browser that they use. If their current language is another language,
Mhm.
it'll translate it into that language
okay,
on the browser. But they have to have their browser set to that other language.
so,
And we had one application that we And you'll see a little further
Right.
down, there's some comments about,
Yeah,
hey, I got it, you asked for it in my native language, I did it, but that native language wasn't very, or that translation wasn't very helpful.
yeah, and that's, I mean, there needs to be if we ask for it, we need to be able to facilitate properly on it.
And then we did translate it from that language back to the English.
Yeah, so and this is where it's difficult because we're on a very short timeline. And we are, it's like, okay, you have to turn it in this time, but then, and from, of course, next year it will be different. If we're not accepting responses after, then there should be more time so that we can have it properly translated. But we need to know that we can accept applications in Spanish, have them properly translated, and in time for being reviewed. So whatever needs to happen.
So let's put a note down for working with our IT person for language translation of the applications. Let's review that process and what the ability is in the current system and what is not available. How we can address
I do
those
think
requests.
the big thing is showing people that, you know, they have questions, concerns, or comments, and that we are actively pursuing responses and answers and trying to find solutions.
And I mean, and if staff receives the request ahead of time,
Right,
we're able to try and facilitate that better.
yeah, I
We have
know,
more time.
on this, it was there wasn't,
There wasn't any
right,
request.
and then I mean, when we got the application back, and then it was just a matter of like, there was no time to actually be able to get a proper translation. But even from the comments saying, I mean, it's not, English is not the strongest language when speaking in the first, and so it is very difficult.
Are there other ideas and thoughts about how we can approach that?
So you're saying that what we've had this year, there was something there, but it just turned out to not be a very good service,
Correct,
translating service?
correct.
Okay.
So that's where
And then timing,
time.
because like, we asked for further clarification.
Correct.
It took a bit to get that, but then there wasn't time to translate or, you know, like further information, which, you know, I mean, is a disservice on our part, but also there is a very limited scope of all volunteers that only have so much time and, you know, deadlines on things, so. But I do imagine some of that will be taken care of with not having, like, application is submitted and there's the fine, like, there's no extra commentary after. So
Yeah.
we just need to make sure that, I guess, if any applications come in another language and need to be translated, that they are actually bumped to like the top of the list
Right.
for attention.
Yeah, when we do our technical reviews,
Right.
what applications came in.
Yeah.
And what, looking to see, oh, wait, that's in a second, that's a different language, I don't remember that one.
Yeah,
Then. But have we ever received an application?
Yes.
Once, maybe, twice. I think only once, really,
Yeah, you mean prior to this last
prior to
round?
this last one. There was only one time before.
the city's supposed to have the whole,
Translation services, correct?
We do.
yeah, and that's just it. So it's one of those that even if we don't receive it,
It's supposed to be
we
available.
need to have it available. Because there's a much bigger issue if we don't.
And I put down that if there is a second language application, staff needs to assess that in technical review and get that
Translate.
translation
That would
addressed.
be the time to do that. So.
Yeah.
Especially since we're not gonna accept additional information afterwards.
Which I think will help solve the problem.
Yes.
They will.
You're correct.
Look, solutions, yay.
Alright, the next one down here says, Only in part when our event takes place just before the new grant is due. It's hard to have the data and updated budget information for the next year while finishing up the current year. I'm not sure if
I
that
see
is a
that as
facility.
I see that as a good point,
Yeah, not-
because everyone has to do budget projections and, yeah, especially, I mean, if it's taking place more than 2 years, they gotta have some information they can
If it's,
average on.
yeah, if it's an annual
Yeah.
thing, they know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, bummer, but yeah, it happens. You know,
That wasn't my comment, I'm trying to keep straight, because I'm doing the Halloween, I'm trying to report on past.
yeah,
I don't understand 38 and talk about the next year, I have to look.
Well, and I think it makes a difference whether it's an event versus a facility operator.
Oh.
Where if it's a facility operator grant, they're trying to, put on
Right.
next year's budget. Okay, you may not even be to that point. And so that's a future budget, really. And I think from the perspective that I've always had from the staff side is like, I'm more concerned about last year's budget and what you're currently doing than I am about what your future budget is looking like. But it is a piece of the application that may not be necessary. And maybe that's
Yeah.
something that we can strike and simplify the format
On what piece of paper?
on the facility operator future year budget information.
Somewhere I have that crossed out already.
And that may be the case.
yeah, I think
I think we
I
discussed
think
that a
we
little bit
did,
last time.
yeah.
It's on this page here.
I think the most of this I have it. Except,
Okay,
so between that and not having the, and I didn't know how to say the phrase of what you were talking about with the cash, bank statements
Oh,
thing, but what's the phrase that we used for not having to do that?
submitting a 1099
I got
IRS
that.
form
but-
instead.
I never could understand what was the phrase to use for not having to do that cash exchange thing with bank statements. You know,
Oh, the financial audit form,
yeah,
not requiring.
It was the accrual process in part, I believe.
Accrual
Accrual.
process.
That's
Okay.
the accounting term, accruals,
Okay,
modified accrual and accruals. Which is a combination.
okay,
The accrual accounting process is where you record anticipated revenues, even though you haven't received the cash yet. So it could be like you received a check, you account for it. The money, cash still has to go, the check still has to go to the bank, bank still has to make the transfer, but you've accounted for it in the accruals.
And it was the 990. I think somebody said 1099. It's the 990. That is the report we do as
Right.
nonprofits.
okay. I think I have it in the notes as 990. I don't understand 38 on there.
I think they
Next one.
misunderstood. Because the only reason you have to have received a grant before was if you're applying to be a facility. So,
So read number 38 for everyone and then we can
All
talk
right, so
about it.
number 38 says, I wasn't aware that you had to receive a grant before in order to qualify for a new grant suggestion. There was no feedback about the scores I got in each area. And if I had known that preference was given to those
I think that person should be reached out to explain that that's not a correct perception that they have. If we know who they are.
and we do, for the most part, I can probably identify who it was.
Yeah, I have it here too. The last sentence was, there's no feedback about the scores I got in each area, and if I had known that preferences were given to those who had gotten grants before, I probably would have tried a different avenue for funding for my project.
There's a lot of projection when attempting to make a new event happen. If that gets rated at a lower level, it doesn't have a lot of new projects to happen. So there may be a little bit of confusion there because the grant application does ask about past events.
yeah,
Oh,
to provide like a little bit of history,
Yeah.
showing that you have
You're
some
right.
experience.
Maybe they're
And
misunderstanding.
maybe
what's-
they're misunderstanding
yeah.
that aspect of it.
And if you walk in the room, a lot of us know each other, we're talking about events that have taken place for a long time. It's just the perception.
Yeah.
Why theirs was scored low compared to World Game.
And that does happen sometimes, that a new event gets scored lower. Just simply because it's a new event.
Yeah, one thing we could do in terms of leading feedback is we could, encourage, the TOT grant reviewers that if they don't give someone a passing score, they have to leave some sort of comment explaining why,
We have, it does say that.
It says on there.
Oh, it does?
On the
So-
spreadsheet, I asked you guys to provide
Yeah.
feedback. And even this year, we had three applicants that asked for feedback.
Yeah.
And we sent out 2-3 emails requesting additional information to the board.
Okay, that's right. I mean, I see that every year, I should remember that.
I should. You'll see it, you'll remember next time.
Okay, next time I see it, yeah, probably will.
No worries. So, yeah, I think that's just a misperception on that. Hopefully they'll come back again and, go through the orientation again and ask that question.
I mean, we could add something clarification to the handbook that says, like where it says
If
asking
you have
about
past
like
experience.
past experience, saying, like adding a note, like, no, you do not have to, like this event, whatever that word is, but something about how
Well, and I
they
think,
wanna just know that they know what they're getting into.
and I think that's the case, but I also think that their perception is that, hey, if I don't have any past experience, I'm not getting points for
Right,
putting something down. And in that case, they would be correct that, if I'd have known that I had to have past experience.
and it does make sense, because I mean, if someone is like, I have no experience whatsoever and I'm gonna do a thing,
Mhm.
then it is one of those where I'm all like, oh, hey, look, you are asking for $10,000 to do something that's never been done before, and you have no experience doing anything before, like no events at all, then yeah. But of course, if they can put together a really good narrative that's like, this is what I'm doing, this is why it's needed, this is the impact it's gonna have, they are gonna score
Higher.
high, because it's gonna be like, you've convinced us that yes, trust in this thing. So it is, I mean, it's difficult.
There's 2 other things that come to mind. Number one, there's also a $2,000 for
Yeah.
new small events.
Yeah.
And that's so that you're not spending an inordinate amount per individual of the people that might come this first time around.
Yeah,
The other thing is that the board has the opportunity to give someone 3 or 4 or 5 or 6,000 instead of 10
yeah,
for their new event,
yeah. I think it's really hard to bring it up, I know it's said to the board, like, okay, you don't have to grant everything at 100%, but like, sitting in a room with all the people who are expecting grants to get their full, no one wants to be the person to say, hey, how about we only give them half of that? Because then
I've
it's
seen
like.
it done though, and it was based on the amount per, the number.
Yeah,
You only expect 100, well then we can't give you 10,000.
Yeah.
I mean, consider how much bigger some of these other events are, and if you're only gonna expect 100, it's just not appropriate,
Yeah.
this time, while you're getting started and growing, so I mean, yeah, it's hard, but if it's appropriate.
well, and I think that's where something in the application for events, I mean, I know we say like, what's your anticipated, and like,
Yeah, we asked them what their,
yeah,
how many people do you expect to come to this event? That's the measurement for number one on
Right.
any event is attendance. That's where you're able to say, okay, hey, show on here attendance, you're expecting 100 people.
yeah, I think
And you ask for $10,000, that's $100 a person.
what's difficult here is that their budget is like, oh, look, we're spending $60,000. And we may only be attracting 100 people, but we're spending $60,000. So, and this is where it does not calculate, like, because then it's like, oh, look, and of that 60,000, we claim we're gonna spend this much on advertising and marketing. So those numbers don't actually all balance in the end. And I
And
think that's where there needs to be some thing, I don't know,
But that's part of the scoring, right?
yeah,
I mean, that's how you do your evaluation between an event that you think is going to be more successful than the other one, because you're gonna be able to compare across all the grants that you're getting. You're able to see what they're writing about and see what they're talking about on their events and how the budgets are lining up or not lining up with
Mhm.
what they're talking about. And you've got past experience of, hey, we've seen that event before.
yeah,
We know approximately if that information is accurate or not. So that's where the scoring comes in. I mean, it's, you can tell them something, but they're gonna still put down what they want to put down.
right,
And from an organization, hey, if I can ask for 10,000, that's the max I can ask for, why not?
Mm.
All they're gonna say is say no, or give it to you. Or something in between.
But I think if you're gonna put together a small project, one, you think $3,000 or $4,000 will meet your needs. If you ask for 10, I would think you'd think, they're gonna see through this.
No.
And I'm not gonna get anything. But hope so.
Those are the dynamics of this whole process. All right. Gone through that one good enough?
I think so.
All right. Next one is, it would be helpful to have a more simple application, another multi-year application for facility operating grants. So
Well, simple, they will see that next year,
Yes.
I trust.
Similar.
that's, you're saying that's the goal of this
Simplifying the
organization.
reporting has helped a great deal too.
Yeah, I would say that a simplified application is possible, as long as you're getting the information, the basic information you need to have to be able to make
Yeah.
a discernment between a good grant and one that's something that's not. The budget portion wasn't super clear. If that portion could be revised to improve readability and clarity, the application process would be much smoother.
There's budget.
I,
There, if you need to see them.
Disagree with that. See, that's
I
public
actually
hearing.
think pretty clear, I mean,
as someone who's sat on both sides, I think the only thing that's not necessarily clear on this budget is people think when they see it, they're like, oh, I have to I've got Statesman Journal Marketing and Travel Salem, where you're just giving examples. People don't necessarily understand that that's an example. And that they can actually change all of those except for the one marketing one that is, you have to fill this out and it's an expectation. I think our budget's pretty easy.
I think some people have trouble with like the Microsoft Excel component, like
Right.
the tech side of things, but not necessarily the budget itself, I think it's pretty
Yeah.
clear.
And even if you're not using that piece of it, if you're not looking at the application itself, just ask for total revenues, total
Right.
expenditures anticipated. And that's as simple as you can get.
Also, frankly, if I'm giving someone $10,000, I wanna know that they can fill out a budget.
Yeah.
Like, I don't
And-
think that's too much to ask.
And we can probably put something in red that says example,
Yeah.
change as needed. Example
And
items.
Actually,
change
maybe
as
that's
needed.
just it. Maybe the example item should be a different color, not red since our marketing one is red, but like in like blue or
Blue or
green
something.
or whatever, like these are,
Something that
Complete as
colorblind
needed.
people can see.
yeah, something. Yeah.
Trying to be inclusive.
But yeah, so I don't really have much more to say on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody does really. I remember these are, explain the challenges that you encountered, so.
Oh, yeah, no, and that's good. I mean, I've seen our budget 12 years in a row, so.
I highlighted these ones just because I thought they were more of a positive spin than really a complaint about the explanation of your challenges. So 41 is, I think it's always challenging to prepare a grant proposal and gather the financial and statistical information you need, especially when you are a small staff and have to wear multiple hats.
Totally agree.
Yep.
And we understand that.
It's pretty straightforward in my opinion.
Totally agree. No, actually, not really, but yeah.
The application was a challenge, but no more than should be anticipated to complete for available funding. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Some questions seem duplicative, so that could possibly be there. The budget section could be made simpler. It would be great to emphasize whether there is a priority on cash expenses and cash match or in kind.
There's not.
Yeah, it just comes down to whether or not your budget balances, it makes
I
sense.
mean, frankly, if someone can get that much in-kind stuff I would go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not being punitive on in
No.
kind. We just want to we want a clarification of what is in kind versus what
Yeah.
you're actually spending.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think,
And I actually think if anything, people short themselves on the in-kind and understanding the value of like some of the stuff.
yeah,
Like they,
maybe because they don't see it as a real part of the cost.
no, because it's there,
And
which
that's,
I find interesting because as someone who's written grants, I'm all like, yeah, I know my in-kind values, because if I didn't have them in kind, then I'm paying for them.
so. But from a budgeting standpoint, it's good to separate the two. So that way you get a true cost identity.
Mhm.
Because really in kind is, I mean, somebody's just like, okay, we'll donate volunteers, or we'll provide this or that at no cost, or they discount
Yeah.
the purchase price of something.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, well, you really didn't spend that money.
Yeah,
So why are you asking for, a
Yes.
large dollar amount when you're not spending that money, when that's not costing you the 60,000?
so I guess if anything, that's the one that, I mean, we've got in-kind that actually calculates in the budget, and in-kind could be listed and not calculate in the budget
True.
in a certain way, because I know there's one grant in there that all their volunteer hours
That's in kind.
for the whole year is in-kind. And it made their budget much higher than it would be if it was just based on the one day.
Next one, the last one here says all past top grants provided an opportunity for showing partnership letters and related support. This one did not make that clear. When we participate in the Zoom meeting review, it was clear that so this one was Rivers of Life. And the application, you can upload things to it, but a letter of support
Was not one of the
was
documents.
not one of those documents.
We all saw the letter of support though. It came with it.
I believe I added it too, but,
Yes.
but he was disappointed that that wasn't part of it.
They did not receive the grant because it was not a strong enough written grant. And the project did not warrant us to give it a passing grade across the board. Whether that letter was included or not, because we all saw the letter.
I don't think letters of support should be allowed unless it's listed as something you can do.
Right, and it wasn't. It was just included anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It was submitted to staff. I couldn't remember if I included it with the packet that went out to you just for FYI, or if I hadn't done it. But the applicant was under the impression that you guys didn't see it and felt that that would have made the difference.
Yeah, no, would not have
And-
made the difference.
And
Didn't make the
We didn't have
difference.
feedback to provide back to
Yeah.
us, so.
yeah, to me, that kind of falls in a very similar category to like, comments made during the grant application meetings.
Yeah,
It's just extra material that, kind of muddies the water of what's fair and what's not fair.
Mhm.
Number 3, did the questions allow you to fully explain your organization's event? There were only 2 organizations that responded with a no,
There's so much space.
indicated they needed more space.
Just for that, I think we should take away 10 characters from the next one. Sorry, guys, yeah.
All right. And the last question on the survey was, what else can you share with us to improve the application process? This is getting very hard to read. Maybe I can go back to the other form. It might be a little bigger.
That's easy to read.
I think it might be. Blow it up a little bit.
I think when you look at the lines about how how difficult it is, it's also important during the meeting. And I know these take a lot of time, but it might be good to give an example. Say you're applying for an event grant and you spend 6 hours on your request and you get $10,000. There are few ways that you can get a better return on an hour or 6 hours of time.
That's a good perspective.
Yeah. I just went through those questions, right? Oh, no.
Yeah, this was the last question. Yeah, a little higher.
There's the list of. Okay, what else can you share with us to improve the application process? So 18 responses out of the 24. We are grateful for TOT funds, but want to stress that the TOT grant is the most difficult and erroneous application that we have every year. We respect the volunteer hours that the TOT board members devote to this process, as well as the hours that city staff devote to TOT, but there really is a better, more streamlined and efficient way to proceed. The world of philanthropy has many examples and best practices that could be a guide for changes to TOT.
Can I just flat out ask, is someone who answered that in this room?
That's not my.
No, so my assumption is I can figure out who that is.
Yeah.
And they are not in this room and are not partaking to help us change that. But I do think that the changes that we are making, they will be happy with. I also don't, I mean, our application can be improved, we're making improvements, but I also don't think that we are the worst application out there, because I've definitely completed ones that take even more work, so.
Well, and I think the clarification on what can be done, because this is a government program,
Right.
and so that does
It's public funds.
give
Mhm.
restraint.
It has different strings attached.
So the thing like the multi-year, because sometimes it feels repetitive. As a facility operator, at the same time acknowledging there's new people joining the board, and so knowing that there's that constraint is helpful.
I hope being encouraged that the right answer and the good answer and the same answer, copy and paste. If it's the same, it's the same.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm
There's
really,
no-
you know, I'm writing the
We-
novel
I was
every
like-
time.
I mean, we know they do it, but also we flat out told them to do it.
Yeah.
Do not reinvent the wheel.
Right.
Give
And
us
I'm
the
really pleased that-
information, but update it properly. Don't give me information that's old.
So what
Good
has also helped is the clarification on the expectation of being at the meetings. Because if there was an explicit expectation that we were supposed to be at the meetings every time, that's a lot of time
Yeah.
on top of the grant application. So things like that, listening to the thing about the budget, those are all really big helps.
And
And I'm really pleased that
there's been.
financial simplicity aspect will be there in the future. That helps a bunch for facility
Yeah.
operators.
And yeah, we've seen that there has been a change in the attendance, so facility operators and the facility that wrote those remarks
Mhm.
has not been seen for a while. Or has not been attending on a regular basis.
Yeah, these kind of answers I think would have benefited from more specifics about, well, what did you find stressful or difficult? Because we're willing to make those changes if you tell us more specifically what they are.
Yeah.
The next one down is the application and reporting takes lots of administrative time. I'd be supportive of a more streamlined application and potentially moving from a reimbursement grant to an award grant. If the committee wanted to explore trust-based philanthropy, they may find some ways to lighten the workload for applicants and city administrative staff.
Has it ever been, it's always been reimbursement?
It's always been reimbursement for all the events and capital improvement. It's not like we're, and
Yeah.
I will say from budgeting and from a city fiduciary responsibility side of things, because it's a reimbursement, that saved us when we had COVID. We
Yeah.
had no revenue coming.
Mhm.
Right.
Yep. And there are other reasons events get canceled, so then you'd have to get the funds back from those.
Yep. It's only
Chris and-
workload on.
Chris and Kelly, how much time, there's the reference to city admin staff. Do you track all of the hours you put toward just the funding related work?
Not,
So we do, on our timesheets, we do have tracking, but we don't look at it.
Mhm. Do you think that during that time it's 20% of your time, 50% of your time, or a smaller percent?
For just overall, you talking about the grants tracking?
During the grant time period from when, you open the applications to when they're scored and announcements are made, what percentage of your time during that period would you be spending on the TOT grant process?
Well, this is really, for us, this is really a year-round thing. This is the majority of bulk of our workload.
I mean, like right now, I'm
Okay.
putting out the contracts, and getting
Uh-huh.
them signed by the, everyone and all,
Yeah.
There's stuff that keeps us busy year
Mhm.
round.
That makes sense. I just wondered since it comes up periodically.
We have the
Yeah.
monthly meetings, unless we cancel them.
Mhm.
We've got, all the events that take place throughout the year, the quarterly reports for the facility operators and payments associated with all those. We've got, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, but it is the
No matter
busiest
what,
during
though.
the grants.
No matter what, even if, whether it was reimbursement or
Yeah.
a trust base, I mean, you'd still
You
have to be
do the
doing
same thing.
contracts, you'd still
Yeah.
have to be issuing checks.
Correct.
So, there might be a little change, but you still have to go through grants and we still have to read them all.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a feasible consideration at all.
Next one. I think that there is a need of the systems of understanding how to support minority community groups with their own characteristics and diversity. After COVID, the society has changed a lot, and there's a lot of need to really change the characteristics in how to evaluate people or projects and follow the right procedures to go on depth to understand how to support people with more disadvantages to really have a good inclusion and equity. The big barriers is that the systems think that people have not right to experience to qualify for opportunities. The community thinks the same way. The system is not the experience to work with the deepest needs of minority communities. I'm not sure if the rest of it is, or that's another one. The support evaluation and process to select the grantees, we feel that was not fair. In writing, it would be hard to explain because we realize that the experience that our disability to communicate by writing how we are working and how we are impacting our minorities communities affected us to qualify for the support. But we are thankful for the support that we have got in the past years that helped us a lot to continue to open spaces for conversations with key community members who are taking time to work very close with us, and through the process, they better understanding our mission, and this facilitated our work to continue to promote equality and inclusion in the deepest way. So a lot there.
Well, we do recognize, we know the issue.
Yeah.
They have received a grant from us before. Obviously, there was something different in the application that they submitted before. And I don't know, it could be whoever wrote their grant. It could be who was on our board.
Correct. There's
So,
all kinds of different
yeah, right, and
aspects to it.
which is difficult.
Mhm.
'Cause-
But I feel that our board is open and inclusive to many of these minority organizations.
Yeah.
And we have board members and we try and reach out as best we can.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and again, we are making changes to ensure that we can be more accessible for them. On this, I mean, I do remember the application because it was very difficult to read. And I just there was not a clarity in what was the impact of this. Like, I don't doubt they could use money and could be doing something, but I'm just not sure of what the final result was or how money was going to be used and yeah,
Wasn't clearly articulated.
no, and it's hard because,
Yeah, it's another language, that's one thing.
well, and it doesn't feel good, not great, like, scoring someone down for the inability for me to, like, for us to communicate doesn't feel good. And like when it's a grant and I'm like, I read this and I'm sorry you did make it the argument and I could understand.
And I don't remember, because I didn't pay attention very well to if this was a new event that they hadn't tried putting on before, or if it was.
I think it might have been, but also what's difficult is there was a lot of events taking place at the same time with different groups. And so there was a lot of overlap of like, who's doing what, when, and serving who.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
Yeah, and that's not to say, I mean, if three people are trying to do the same event and one person makes the argument in the case the strongest. Yeah, and that's, I think in this kind of case.
In this
happened.
case, there was at least three other events that were very similar in nature.
Yeah.
For that particular community.
I do think that, as we've already pointed out, like, you guys, staff-wise, are there to help. So stuff that could have been brought earlier. So I take responsibility for us, there's our part that we play, but I think there is also with our applicant.
Yeah, there is, this particular applicant, when it comes to the reporting side of things, last year, I had to reach out 3, maybe 4 times just to get the report in to be able to get the money out to them. So that's.
So.
There's a lot of work involved.
And that translates then, we did not fund this year. If it had gone different last year, it might have been different this year. It will be different next year, maybe.
But and I think that there were other groups in that community that have applied and received funding. So
yes,
I think we're doing a better job of reaching out to that group.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're responding. So I think in the future, unless we see those applications drop off and they don't come back, then might be something. The next one is nothing to suggest or no suggestions. The next one is the information or specific feedback on the scoring decisions would be great. As it is, it seems a bit subjective. If I were able to get specific feedback, then maybe I could make changes needed for future applications, or maybe the first time applicants, if their project is to be considered, then there could be an initial review with feedback and chance to rewrite prior to final submission. As it is, I have no idea how to improve my grant application or what was missing according to those who were providing scores. So again, that comes back to being able to have the board members provide feedback on how, if there's an application that doesn't score very high, what was it that led to that score being lower?
Yeah. Do you ever get feedback? Do you, as for your organizations, Yvonne, like, do you guys get feedback when you don't receive a grant?
No, we don't. That's what I was just going to say, is this is not a typical thing that you get when you have a grant. It's very rare to be able to get feedback on what you did right or wrong. And I can only think of one grant that I've had that opportunity with, and that particular one offered something where you could reach out for feedback, but we've also had that opportunity to ask for the notes if we wanted them, or any specific, higher level feedback. But to get all of the notes, I think would just be that's above and beyond.
I think as a board, we need some, anonymity isn't quite the word I'm looking for, but discretion to score those as you feel you need to. And if all the feedback is given, that might be challenging. Like Yvonne, I've foundations that we have a relationship with, I've asked, and that's been more of a conversation. I never got like, oh, here's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's competitive, especially with those events. There's so
Right.
many applications now.
Yeah.
It is competitive, and so the request to basically help me make my application better. When staff is so helpful and accommodating,
Right.
the first couple of years, Chris would be like, you mean this? And I'm like, I do mean that, thank you very much. That exists.
But to me, if you read through the manual, you read through all the application stuff, you should be able to turn in a pretty good application despite
Right.
following the instructions that's written.
There's so much information.
Well, and I think, there's the narrative side of it is when someone tells us about what they're planning. It sounds good. We're all excited.
Yeah.
Like, let's make this happen. So, yeah.
But this would only be a problem if there were like factors that we were considering that weren't obvious, which I don't think is the case.
Yeah.
Everything that we're considering is pretty transparent and just out there for people to, look at.
Right.
I think the only thing we need to do is make sure in orientation that our culture of we're here to
Yeah.
answer your questions ahead of the deadline. We will talk to you ahead of the deadline. What you turn in then is what you turn in. And
Yeah.
we're really gonna have to clarify the new culture of what you turn in then is what you turned in. But to clarify both aspects of that, ahead of the deadline, we'll answer your questions. After the deadline, what you turn in is what you're gonna get graded on.
Staff will overemphasize it as much as we can. All right.
I don't know of another grant that I do that the administrators are more accessible. I mean, I have others that I can ask questions, but often it's like up until a few weeks before the deadline. There are a lot more restrictions. So I really think we can feel good about the accessibility to getting more information.
I also think limiting, stopping that conversation piece of it after will help with some of this feedback. It almost
Yeah.
feels like, well, now tell me more. You like it.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, this is the deadline. This is the information you get. Will help with that.
Well, and it will ensure that, if some people are feeling that there's a favoritism because people got to give more testimonial later, it stops that. So it's like, no, everyone is at the same point.
Yeah.
So I'd say with that line of thought and idea of changing to no additional information after the submission of the application, the recommendation would probably be that there's no requirement for any of the organizations to attend those December, January, February meetings when
No.
the applications are reviewed.
No.
Because you're not planning.
We're
on
not gonna be
accepting-
asking them any questions.
Yeah.
No, and I think it would give you as a board
More time.
opportunity, more time to discuss with
Just
each other.
complete the scoring.
I'm looking ahead at the next one. Don't we send that out as an email of who made the score and who made the cut and the next steps?
So let's see, the next one is,
We technically already have.
Huh?
We sent out for which one?
okay, so we'll keep on moving. Back, we talked about that one. This year was the best year yet. Thank you to the board and all this time they put in. Okay, I didn't think you need to change anything, seemed more defined for me and them. So those are three good positive ones. I think this one right here is the one to
That's
talk
what I
about.
was
Okay.
referencing.
Had I not attended the Zoom meeting, I would not have known if my organization was to receive funding for next year and for how much. Perhaps this information could be communicated, at least unofficially, sooner than June.
But it is.
It is.
So,
I mean, the scores are sent to everyone.
Yeah, it's on
so the
the
March meeting,
Yeah,
the packet is
yeah,
posted online
yeah.
and is available to everyone. It's emailed out. The only thing that I can see is if this was a brand new organization or an individual on a board, executive board or something like that,
Yeah.
that we didn't have an updated email address for,
Yeah,
that then they may not have received that email notification.
If something-
But somehow they got the Zoom meeting link.
yeah,
So
yeah.
somebody got the email with
Um,
the packet and the
They
information.
also would have attended the October meetings that told them, hey, this is how it goes.
And
And
I
every
tell them
meeting after
every year, March is when those
Yeah.
scores are gonna be notified. You can attend, or you can take a look at the agenda packet at the March meeting, and that'll tell you whether or not you received a passing score
Yeah,
and would be considered for the event funding. So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's possible, but we're talking like less than 1%.
yeah,
I guess if, who applied and who is now the executor, you
It's
know.
whoever the new executor is and stuff like that.
yeah,
And that
could
does
be a-
happen.
a miss.
It doesn't happen often, but
but that's also not our responsibility.
Yeah.
I mean,
technically,
on
no.
their end, yeah,
If they're not getting the emails, then they need to reach out to the city staff and provide an email that we can
Yeah.
use. And we'll add it to, I mean,
So is that referencing the meeting where the event
so that would
things
be,
were decided? That's the only thing I could guess.
I'm thinking it has to do with the March meeting. If they hadn't attended the Zoom meeting on March, when we notified or went over the final scores and said, this is who passed and who didn't pass.
Okay,
That's what I'm taking that as. And that
but
is,
they obviously got the link to the survey,
and they got the link to the Zoom.
so
So somehow,
they got a link to Zoom and they got a link to a survey. And the packet exists on the internet
yes,
as well as an email.
yes.
Actually, the email, it links to
The
the
email
internet.
links to the website, so.
Yeah,
I think I sent a congratulations email to everyone too and said, here's what happened at this meeting and here's your next steps. You know, we won't do this until June, but
yeah,
you know, blah, blah, blah.
And I know this year we also did send out emails afterwards saying, these are the next steps,
Yes.
yeah, I think. There was a miscommunication somewhere, but I don't think it's on us.
Let's see, I think you all do a great job and we appreciate all your efforts. Take that. Hooray. It would be great if the application deadline was after the first of the year instead of November, since the actual authorization of the budget isn't until May or June. It seems like it only takes 3 to 4 months to complete the process and make recommendations. So again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
it doesn't, so.
It's just, because of the number of applications and we're trying to
Well,
provide as much time for the board
It's
to.
what it seems,
It
but
is.
also if they read, here's how it comes in and here's how it's broken down and here's why. I mean, and I totally get that. It would be nice if the deadline was later, but I am not reading through 55 grants in 1 month.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I don't want to work on them during the holidays either.
right? Yeah, there's like, it's,
Yeah, I do try and get the deadline before Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah,
Thanksgiving through December.
I think it's also, I mean, I do totally get, because I have the sympathy of, I see Kathleen and she's like, I can't talk to anyone, I have to do this, and I'm like, you got it. But it's also one of those where it's like, it happens at the same time every year.
Yeah.
And so, as unfortunate as it can be, just because it's another deadline, you at least know when the deadline is and can budget hopefully hours to go to that, so.
Your application process is not intimidating and the staff is helpful and willing to answer questions.
Aw, they're not intimidating.
Send them some extra money.
Oh, the application process, not intimidating, okay. Not that Chris is intimidating. I again encountered issues with not receiving automated messages to my email address. I know I have an old email provider, though I plan to use a different email address next application cycle. If this is the one I'm thinking, they have a Juno account.
Oh,
Anybody
I was
knows
gonna say
Juno?
AOL,
What's a
but-
Juno?
That's actually,
oh,
I
yeah.
was thinking,
Yeah.
it was ages, I'm like, does Ryan even know?
No,
what a
man.
Juno is?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with it.
No, yeah.
It's,
That is how.
it's one of the first, it's one of the first organizations.
Does anyone think we need to do something more like MailChimp where people subscribe and update to us rather than us keeping a distribution list? And if it's wrong, you know, we,
Okay, so
That's a good question.
yes and no. It would be great if we had just they have to opt in and they're responsible. But in the changing world of privacy and the internet, yeah, you can't, everyone's opted out. You can't track, they can't say that they've received it. So depending on how much responsibility we want to take, I don't know, like, there's just a big thing with email lists now where it's, they automatically get flagged in accounts and, put into a separate place, even though you're like,
Spam
no, I want this, it'll still go to that place because of the
filters.
yeah, and there's things that we can't stop, and even users can't necessarily stop just because email, like they're kind of cracking down on.
so people really have
Yeah.
to check their own junk and spam.
Yeah, they really do. Like, the big thing is we can tell them, like, make sure that like Chris is in your like address book and he's like on your preferred receivers senders list and like that you've like are actually paying attention. And yeah, it's a hard thing.
But do you think that they are referring to emails from you, or when they do the application and you say save because you're going to come back to it, that they're referring to those coming to them? Because that could be a matter of a typo. If you say I want to save it and you enter your email address, and if I leave an E out of my email address, or it's just lost in the system.
And so, to a certain extent, yes, I'm pretty sure I know who this one is. That's why I said it's the Juno account. I'm pretty positive, because I do know that was an issue this year.
Mhm.
But there has been in the past where I received an email address to put into and I misspelled it, which can happen. I'm not an English major or spelling expert. But it took a few tries to realize, oh, you're not getting the emails, and they got back to me and say, hey, I didn't get the monthly email. And then I can go back in and double check and make sure that I got it spelled correctly in my email group that I have. So those things happen, but again, they don't happen very often.
Mhm.
But you have more, recently we've had more turnover in the organization's staffing, and that's when that does take place. I mean, Alicia, I still have Joan as the contact for AC Gilbert's director when I put it in, so. And
Been 8.5
Joan,
years.
Joan hasn't been there for a while. But it's still
Right.
AC Gilbert's director
Yes.
at Gmail or whatever it is.
Executive director.
Executive director, yes.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where we can just tell people like
Encourage them.
technology is our friend and our enemy at the same time. So we could send an email to someone over and over and they may never get it. And it's not us not trying.
Chris, is it required because we are city funded or, a public grant that everybody's email be listed in your messages so people can do the reply all thing?
No.
No.
Instead of using the BC, so people don't respond back and go, can't wait for the meeting, or I'm going to be late because my dog is at daycare that day. The things that people just think, instead of hitting reply to you, they hit reply all.
No, that's user error on both staff's side of things as well as others. I'm not familiar with using the blind copy as much. I don't know I don't use it very often.
Mhm.
But we could.
But we can.
We would
I
do
just-
that for you if you asked.
I've never tested it out to know that if you're on the BCC side of things and you hit reply all, if
It
that.
won't reply.
Okay, so.
No,
That's
Yeah,
learning on
so
my side.
If you were to BCC everyone,
Uh-huh.
and basically you could send the message to yourself, or you could send it to Kelly and then BCC everyone else, or actually you could send the message to the
The
board.
board and
And then
BCC everybody else.
BCC all of the other
Okay.
people. The only, if someone chooses to reply all from a BCC, it's only the ones that are public that they will reply to. So if it was the board, it would reply to you and the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then my other question associated with that would be, obviously, those that receive the email don't know who else received
Right.
the email, especially if they're looking for somebody else in their organization to have received that email
Well,
as
that's not
well.
our responsibility though. They can forward, or they can have communication.
I'm just trying to be overly
I
helpful.
know, you're being too nice and I'm trying to save time.
It sounds like years.
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
question.
No, because that's just it. I mean,
But-
they have to communicate on their end.
Right.
They received information.
But yeah, so that, and if I can do BCC, that's not a problem. I'm just always in the back of my mind wondering who's getting it, who's not getting it, who's seeing it,
Right.
and knows who's received or didn't receive it. Because sometimes I'll have somebody from another organization say, hey, I noticed so-and-so wasn't on this email
Yeah.
list.
Carly,
because-
you've done that for us.
And yes. And said, oh, you gotta send it off, they changed executive director or something like that.
Right.
And so,
Yeah, that's
It's
because
helpful.
I'm the person who's reading all those like 150 other emails. I'm all like, who's getting this message?
curious minds want to know.
It's this now instead of that.
Yeah.
You know?
I think for our users, like the potential applicants, they would probably appreciate BCC because I don't know. I'm like, my email's out there.
Correct, that's the
I'm
thing,
gonna
is
be
most of
getting
these,
spam and all this other junk anyway. I know how to flag properly
Yeah,
and sort things.
for
Some people don't.
for any organization that is using an official
Yeah.
organization email.
Yeah.
It should be available and out there, and they
Right.
probably don't mind others
No.
seeing that they're receiving that email as well.
Yeah.
I
For
think
those that are using a personal email, then yeah, I can see
Yeah,
a BCC would probably be.
and it's the reply all that is like, it's like, and I know it's embarrassing to people when you think you're just replying to the sender and saying, what your plans are, whether or not you're going or whatever. Then another way you can handle it is I've seen where at the bottom of whatever the message it is, it says this message was sent to, and you paste the full list there, but you can't reply to that list, but it allows people to look to see if their people are getting included.
Or you just don't hit the reply all, just hit the reply.
Yeah, that would be smart.
Okay. Anything else on this topic?
No.
All right, we'll move on. Let's see. Where are we at? Are we on this one?
Yes.
I heard a lot of questions from the judges centered around outreach and undeserved or underserved communities and inclusivity. Sorry.
little Freudian slip.
However, no, I do not remember there being a specific question centered around that in the application. For that reason, I centered my explanation around bringing people to Salem, since it is tax generated by tourists and travelers. If the inclusivity and active outreach is a key part of the decision-making, I would make sure there is verbiage asking about how our organization works to achieve this goal.
There is.
I was gonna
Out
say,
there.
Yeah, I mean,
there
they
is,
make it pretty obvious, I think.
it's in the manual. Again,
And on the application.
yeah,
We even we say how many out of town we expect compared to local, and you say which of the goals, if bringing people in from out of town is a priority in it.
well, and on underserved communities, it's we talk about, I know there's something in there about,
Well, on the
About
reporting
making
form
it-
too.
yeah.
Did you reach out to the Spanish speaking
yeah,
population?
I'm like, I know there's stuff in there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And this is not my comment, but it's somewhat related to the question I asked when we met last time, of like,
oh,
what
yeah,
does it mean? And I
Right.
think I can relate a little bit to this comment, because sometimes it's the questions that get asked about the application that seem different than what's explicitly stated in
Yeah.
the application, that it does explain all of that so well.
yeah,
And that's, are you talking about the question you asked during the meetings
Yes.
rather
So-
than?
Each
what's on
review
the
that we're not gonna
application?
do anymore.
Yes.
Okay,
So
so
what do
if
the
we're not,
board
if
members
we're not gonna
say?
add,
What
Yeah.
about
allow.
this? Yeah. It's just, it's adjacent
mhm,
to what's in the application, but it introduces a new concept to that DEI.
yeah.
People go,
See, and this is where it also gives me a moment where I think, okay, so we host a meeting where people come and we walk them through the like, this is the manual, this is the application, ask questions. Those of us who have seen all the things before know what we're expecting. New people are like, okay, good, this is, teaching them something. But I almost wonder, I'm like, if they had, not that they would read the manual first, but if they had the manual like a week before the event and be like, hey, go through the manual, read it. If you've got any like, be prepared to ask questions. But of course, you're still accessible. As soon as the application publishes, so. Yeah, I don't know, I think we do a lot to help try and give them money.
I think like you said, that it is in the manual, it is in the
orientation.
application
Yeah.
of what they're asking specifically.
Yeah,
Like Ron said, this is how you'll report whether or not you're bringing
Right.
people to Salem.
yeah,
It's included outreach, yeah, so.
I mean, yeah, I do not remember there being a specific question centered around that in the application. Outreach.
I mean, the
Yeah.
question might not flat out be whatever,
The
but
three
it's
goals, how many
Yeah.
tourists, city residents and.
quality of life.
Quality of life, and then
Yeah.
the next one underneath there is, tell us about how
Yeah.
your event is related to one of those three things,
Right,
or whatever one you selected. So, yeah, I think we're good on that. From orientation to application to staff. Otherwise, I think the questions and process is pretty straightforward and made sense, thank you, so nothing there. The information about the timeline on funding decisions could be more transparent. It was hard to find information on your website or in minutes that specified when the applications could expect news about funding decisions.
We can do better on that.
So I make that statement.
I mean, I was gonna say,
It's
it's
on
in
the
there,
orientation.
yeah, it's in there, but this is almost where it's like a checklist of like, here are the key dates, flat out on a piece of paper, that nothing else is on the page. Except for these dates in your calendar,
It's in my presentation.
yeah,
The key dates.
We do go
Yeah.
over like typical top board here when, we do stuff, but they might want something a little more like, here's the exact date,
right,
Well, and when I do the presentation, the orientation in October before the application, it's in there. These are the
Yeah.
key dates. This is when it's due. These are the meetings that can happen.
yeah.
This is when you'll know
Um,
if you're receiving funding.
I know on our website, obviously, like, it's got we're doing orientation and here's when things are due. We potentially put it in bullet form on there of like, application opens on this date, due on this date, decision on this date, funds awarded. Like,
Yeah,
that
we can
just,
add bullet points on that.
yeah, just
Instructions,
because
schedule,
people don't read
everything.
4 points of just these are the dates of, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's more what they're getting at.
yeah,
All right, moving on. The more we can hyperlink from the application to the manual and vice versa, the better. It would be nice if the application to note the value of questions and link to the information on that in the manual. Make application downloadable, create copies for your draft version. So I think this first piece, having hyperlinks going back and forth between the manual and the
Yeah.
application itself. There are a few hyperlinks on the application. but at the same time, links get broken and you have too
Yeah.
many, it's gonna be confusing on. You know, you can print out the manual.
That's what I was gonna say, I mean, best practice. Yeah. Reference,
Okay. Make application downloadable and create a copy for your draft version. Okay, I could see that. But I've told them in the orientation that the manual has all those questions.
yeah, and the whole, put it all in a document, cut and paste
Cut
it
and
in,
paste it, yeah. So,
yeah. I don't know anyone who's written grants before.
and this is an
You
online,
never think to
online
just put
submission,
it
so.
into the application without having all your answers. No, because if you lost that, if suddenly the power went out and everything disappeared, yeah,
And that's the push and pull of asking for people's responses.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, if you could make this very easy for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, it's not something I would expect.
So
Oh.
next part of that.
I can explain the next one. That's mine. So we're kind of unusual in that, but I think that there's a couple of places that I think that there might be a couple of other organizations where in the detail count as far as how do you get to your attendance, I know that there can be questions about, oh, was that just your tours? How did you get to that number? And it would be good to have a place to separate out if it's paid attendance or outside attendance or what.
yeah, because I asked you that question this year,
Yeah,
and then
And-
you were like, oh, it's the gardens, and I was like, oh, makes sense, yeah.
because we get a huge number of people there, and some of the funds we receive go in that, direction. So it's valid, to include them. And that the next one is also mine. And to clarify on that, I think that it was because I don't do the CapEx, or didn't this for a while. So maybe the 20K was including the match. Is that right? It was 10K. But then it was 20K if you, including the match that the organization gives. So
So,
That's a you question.
So it's hard to know in that where you were just showing, Chris, on
yeah,
the report. It
on
just,
the-
I'm always like, do I put that in other, where do I put garden? I put it in other programs.
Events, festivals, experience, other programs, yeah. Offsite activities.
But off-site would be like totally off-site,
Yeah, I imagine it would.
yeah, that would be my thought of that.
This report is specific to the facility operators, so.
Right.
Yep. It's one of those things every year I wonder about it. So I thought I'd throw it out there.
Well, that's different than like, well, in the application, it was like the anticipated attendance. Since it was the garden, that's because I asked the question, because I was like, Deepwood gets that busy tours. And I totally did not think, oh yeah, there's a garden there.
Outside.
And then as soon as you said, we got a garden, I was like, oh, yeah, right.
So
And that was, well,
what's our takeaway?
whatever. I mean,
So what's the takeaway on that? Do we need to change something? Do we not need to change something?
I don't
I
think,
think we need to, as long as,
That's
you
a
know,
facility
there's-
operator grant.
no, but it's not a facility, it was for an event, it was for an event.
Or was it for an event then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Would have been. Right. Something on attendance, because facility,
For the facility, identifying the actual type of what you want. It's outcomes, targets.
yeah, Yeah, and I think it was probably just here, like anticipated attendance and like method used. I mean, someone could just type in saying. Oh, I don't know, because this is the only
It-
one that had a question on it for.
It also comes up in the total number hours you're open, because our gardens are open sunrise to sunset. The museum home is open very different hours. So, and that's one of the questions too, I think number 10.
So that's an issue whether to double count hours or just consider it, two things that are running parallel together, is that correct?
I didn't understand completely, but we combine them.
Okay,
So
so
yeah.
it's two separate things you're adding together, not saying they're both running simultaneously under the same set of hours.
So I don't report the home hours because there's not a separate place, because the home isn't open if the gardens aren't open. So it covers it, but I know it could create confusion to somebody thinking there's no way your museum is open all those hours.
Yeah,
But we are,
But-
we are available all those hours.
I think the big thing is we just need to understand it's museum and garden. It's not just museum, it's not like, right, so it's just that was the clarification as soon as I asked.
Mhm.
Then I was like, oh, yeah, makes sense.
And maybe we're so unique that it doesn't need to be considered. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Okay.
And now I know better for next year.
Okay.
All right. Manual said 10x for cap, but found out it was actually 20.
Is that including the match, Chris, the 20?
No.
No.
So,
So-
okay,
The
so
capital- So last year, the board decided to raise the capital improvement grant dollar award to 20,000. as the
Okay.
max.
It's
so
still,
on page 2, it says 10,000.
it's still a matching grant, so to get the full 20,000, the organization has to have spent 40,000.
But
So if
it's
you have 40,000 in receipts, you're gonna get your full 20,000.
okay. So it says on page 2, number 2, toward the bottom, a TOT grant request not to exceed $10,000 and represent not more than 50% of the project budget. That's what it says for capital asset. What am I not getting?
Actually, I should probably pull up last year's just so that way apples to apples. There's the PDF version from March. That was October. Okay. Yeah.
Where I'm looking at it is on the city website,
On the Swedish.
So it was right there, Chris.
the cityofsalem.net site, where you can pull up the grant manual.
It says 20.
Not to exceed 20 on page 2.
So they may
Yeah.
have,
I'm on the City of Salem website right
I'm
now.
thinking it didn't get updated on the City of Salem
the city
website.
website may not have been updated.
That's a possibility.
Yeah, I think that if you pull it up, which I'm doing right now, it says up at the top 2024-25 grant application manual, and that's where I was looking at it during the process. Then on page 2, the bottom of it, point number 2, says not to exceed 10,000.
This page on grant. It's these.
In the interest of time, can we look for this later?
Yeah.
I can send you the link to it too, Chris.
Well,
Because,
we know
yeah.
we know that it's supposed to be the $20,000.
I've made a note to check,
We'll
Okay.
check it. We'll get
Right.
the website and make sure that gets updated.
get it
Go on
updated.
from
Yeah.
there.
We only have a half hour, so we better.
Yeah, we better scoot along.
Thank you.
You lost your page. Is there a tab there? There you
There
go.
it is.
Too many tabs.
Um,
Consider eliminating in person? Yes.
Yep,
let's do
way
that.
ahead of you.
Done.
Okay. Next. All past application process prior to 2024, excellent, provided an opportunity to show collaboration and support. At this time, we feel discriminated against because our website, Facebook covers all of our projects, not just the ones submitted for review. Moreover, we feel discrimination against because of State of Oregon's support for our programs and the effort to save our tour vessel were ignored. Travel Oregon's director wrote a very supportive letter to which the committee never saw. Meanwhile, we watched certain groups being given 8 to 10 minutes commentary on their grants, and which were insufficiently prepared with the committee.
I think we covered this.
So I think we've
In the
covered this.
interest of time, I think we
Yeah.
made the changes about conversation during. And we've made the clarification about applications, what they can and can't include. I think there's gonna be a lot of things that keep the playing field more equal. Moving forward.
That was that letter that you guys had seen.
Wait, go back to the letter? Yeah, Marion County Cultural Trust, that's not us.
No, so it's 2 birds with 1 stone. Sending this to Travel Oregon. As part of the application process. Their piece as well.
Yeah, that letter didn't convince me.
And that's not the purpose of the letter of support.
No.
They also
It
talk about
actually
this,
made me question Todd Davidson.
they also kind of talk about the Sturmore itself, not really the event, which was sort of outside the scope of,
Yeah.
what we were dealing with.
So we've had discussion about everything that came from the survey. Any other questions or feelings about survey results?
No, thank you for going through this.
Is there a survey that's done by the board members about the process and suggestions or feedback that they have?
That's right here,
Well,
right?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, it's kind of what we're doing, yeah.
And that's, part of that is also, the
Sure.
parking lot list and the things.
Yep.
Are identified by the board, to go back over. So,
I think the creation and keeping of a parking lot list is
that is,
their opportunity to say, why don't you look at this?
questions at this time? Thoughts? Okay. The list up there are the parking lot lists. Anything on here you think that we haven't uncovered as of yet? Discussing limiting organizations to 1 event or maybe 1 large and 1 small. Thoughts?
I'm open to,
You never know what you're gonna get each year.
no, and that's just it. And again, we just need to stress with our board that we don't have to grant people. When everyone asks for 10,000, we should have a way of possibly looking at it that, okay, if we don't grant everyone at 10,000, what is it? I mean, I know there was concern of people not receiving funding this year. And there also was some, I mean, of course, everyone's happy they're gonna be getting something. There also was some concern that people were not getting the 10,000 they asked for. There were a couple people that weren't happy about that. Yeah,
One grant I received, they ask in two different ways. They say, if you do not receive the full amount, will you still be able to do this event? And in another place, they say, if you do not receive full funding, what is the minimum amount you would need to pull this event off? Just throwing it out there that that's something I've seen done.
I mean, I did ask people,
Scott too.
yeah. Not, I just don't think many people would say that they'll take less,
Correct.
because they've asked for that for a reason. And there's some who didn't ask for full amounts. And they could have asked for more.
Well, and you take it, when we go through, you see how many of those applications requested the full amount,
Yeah,
which is the majority.
Yeah.
There's only a handful, maybe 2 or 3
right,
or 4 that requested something less than the maximum.
yeah,
So you again, you're trying to identify, which application and really truly is in need of the full amount versus those that aren't, and how well that application is written, and whether or not it's justified for that amount.
yeah.
So I don't know that you can really parse that out any better.
And we haven't always had the reality of there's not gonna be enough to go around.
No.
This was kind of the first year that we had that. And it became real clear that we just have to be clear ahead that it's okay to have multiple events, applications.
It's okay to ask for less.
Yes, yes.
It's,
Well, in the application manual, it states
oh yeah,
clearly that it's the discretion of the board to
Mhm.
choose to fund you at the full amount or something less.
I still wanna, I still wanna see more, I wanna see someone try for 2 event grants. Because we can't always say no. I don't want them,
Right.
I don't wanna say no before they've applied, that's, yeah. So, I'm still.
You don't want
open
to discourage somebody from
accepting too.
applying.
Yeah.
So we'll just table that for now, or maybe if the subcommittee comes back to that, you provide your feedback, we provide that feedback to the rest of the board. And feel, sign up what the rest of the board feels like. Discuss returning of next just to 100. I think we've gone over that number. That doesn't really make a difference in the scoring.
25 versus
25
100.
versus 100.
Kind of decided 25 was simpler and it didn't really help.
Yeah, it didn't really make a difference. Discuss funding levels at 10,000 versus something less if numbers of applications may continue to grow beyond funding each year.
So, I know there was talk about, first time event or, I can't remember what it
New
was.
small event grants.
Yeah, something. And we could, there could be a category of yes, we have events. But there could be a separate part of it that's these are first time events and we look at them as themselves, that it's a first time thing. So I don't know that they're graded different, but
Yeah, it's still using the same scoring.
Right.
And they're still
yeah,
stacking up against the.
yeah, so it
historical
really
events.
doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, that's just an additional element of complexity I don't think really adds anything.
Yeah.
Me personally, I like to keep the 10,000 on there versus less
Yeah,
and only go less if we have to. And we agree to.
well, and I'm just thinking about some of those experimental events that it's a first time thing that they're this is different, this is something new. Or this is an organization that hasn't applied before, but what's hard is that their applications still has to meet certain requirements, no matter what, and again, people can ask for less.
Or be given less by the board's discretion.
Any other thoughts? Discuss facility operator grants being funded equally versus high and low scores each year.
How do you guys feel about that?
I'm fine with that.
And it helps us, we're trying to collaborate with each other, and if there's a sense of competition, move this beyond the event capital. It just makes sense to do it equally.
Yeah, I mean, for example, all the facility operators are really pushing to make it competitive. I mean, we would take that into consideration, but if everyone's okay with being equal, I'm fine with that.
I don't think it should be. I think we should vote on it every year. I mean, we know we've got the same facility operators right now, and every year it may continue the same way, that it's like equal across the board. But I don't want to put that into writing in case 5 years down the road, something changes, and so I'd rather vote on it on a case by case, year by year basis. Because we're fun. But if everyone else wants to do it differently, I'm totally fine with that.
That makes a lot of sense.
But yeah, I don't have a problem every year saying, yes, you guys are great and you work together and I appreciate that. And not that you wouldn't 5 years from now, but I'm just like, I don't, like if something changes and one of the facilities changes or we get a new facility and then, yeah, I just don't wanna, I don't wanna make an assumption that,
To me, it makes sense to reassess on a regular basis, just to
Yeah.
see if that's still what people want to do.
I think it sort of helps protect the quality of the applications for you not to necessarily expect that it's just gonna be equal across the board. So it just protects a little bit, like not really an issue right now,
yeah,
but keeps it from becoming an issue that, you know, just gives a little more option for the board to say, this one was so bad and then these 5 were so good. You know, I don't want, it just
Well-
keeps some accountability in there to not expect it as a
I think you'll see that in the applications as you compare facility operator applications across the board and see that there are some well-written ones and there are some that aren't quite as well-written.
yeah, they're not as strong. But
And then it comes down to, you know, how much involvement does that organization have with the board on a regular basis? Roger, what do you think?
I like the way it's been going where it's a vote and it happens and they get equalized, but it's still not a given.
yeah,
I like that too.
I mean, it also gives us something to do every year. You know, so we can be like, look, we have an action plan, and there's a thing that we did on it. Yeah. And I do think our facilities have been really great about being like, hey, we're all equal and
Yeah.
and accepting it that way. And I don't have a problem that they bring it up and I'm like, I disagree with what you guys want to do, but I will totally let you do that.
Let's see, we've already talked about the non-acceptance of corrections and addendums beyond the application deadline. So I think we've got a good recommendation there. Discuss further refinements to the application questions, character limitations, and recipient answers, sorry.
We should list exactly how many words they get to put to these.
What's of those?
Yeah, I'd like that. There was a comment in there. I
Yeah,
think it was
there
actually
was.
from Yvonne, and I like that too. Yeah, because I'm the one on word count. Yeah, and the inability to go over them because I swear some of them went over what I thought they should have. There's some IT things, you know.
There's some technical stuff.
I totally
out there
get that,
behind the
but-
scenes.
But we really need to get those nailed out now because our really good tech person that developed this is
Is
gonna
retiring.
retire.
Oh, give me
So
Yeah.
we really want to get this in really good order while we have her.
Yeah,
And she she will do what we ask and, you know, the next person, who knows.
All right, so what does the board feel we need to address now at this point in time?
The applications here, this is last year's application
Mhm.
and things that we changed from the year before.
Or in red?
Mhm. You're right,
Okay.
strike through. I personally feel like the feedback from facility operators that are actually or anyone that's actually received the grants, been an applicant and received a grant. That's so helpful. So if you have more to share it. That includes, you know, Roger and Carly too, you know.
What would be helpful for a subcommittee? Subcommittee, pull up and go by each application. Do you want to pull up a past or the most recent application that was submitted and look at that, what that looks like? You want to go back over the questions that are in the manual for a review of the questions for each application?
I'm just trying to think about how, like, we said there was like some repetition. People pointed out there was repetition and they felt, and I felt like the same, I'm like, we're repeating ourselves. But then a budget doesn't come in that functions properly, and I'm really appreciative of the repetition here that makes them outline budget. In some ways, I'm like, your budget still should have worked. Can we kind of come out of here and make so that their budget has to work in the document? What would be the fallout of that?
It just explains.
Yes, it does. It's like,
Chris is
You
big,
cut out
but-
if you cut out the application question for budget stuff off of there and you just are left with
yeah,
the spreadsheet, you know, and we're already
how many
struggling with the
people are
spreadsheet.
going, how many people are gonna be disqualified?
How many people are gonna get it filled out correctly?
Yeah,
Which one's easier to fill out, the application question?
well, I want the spreadsheet, not the application question.
Okay,
If I remember correctly, that was one of the things we discussed as a subcommittee last year, if we should just have it just as a spreadsheet, or
Yeah, we
have
did.
it just as the text, have as a mixture of the two, it's not a mixture of the two, just have those checks and balances.
And it was because we accepted applications that had poor budgets,
Mhm.
that did not function, that were not well completed, and so we relied on what was written.
or the what was written helps, hopefully,
Yeah,
but not
Yeah.
always.
and this is a case of like,
Vice
we're
versa.
making a lot of changes, and I think all the stuff we're doing is for the better, that's gonna help streamline the application, so that we're gonna feel like, I mean, it's gonna be easier, hopefully, for them to answer. Because they're gonna have to have it all answered in the application as opposed to relying on coming to a meeting and getting to give extra testimony, or not worried, like, they're like, well, I can just submit it and I can just show up and verbally, yeah, which I do think makes it evens the playing field better there.
Yeah, and I think one of the benefits of having it so you can't say stuff afterwards is it's gonna incentivize you to make sure it's super
Yes.
right the first time.
Yeah, and
So we might see, you know, just benefits in the application just through that alone.
yeah, well, and that's why one of the things is that I'm the one who wants to change everything. I'm like, maybe leave this and see how they can fill it out correctly without any later comment, and we can address it next year. See how they do, see how it goes with like,
So you're saying just see if, you know, not be able to submit agendas after the
Yeah.
deadlines fixes the issue?
yeah, exactly, thanks, that's what I meant.
Thanks.
And I think it also gives our team a good baseline. Because like you said, Carly, these are significant changes.
Yeah.
Changing this to accrual method, and not doing the later comment.
Yeah, so I think that is gonna be an adjustment. For some more than others, and in the end, we will see in the whether it's, we still get 55 applications, how many of them pass that first initial step of it's complete?
And we have a pretty high passing rate
Yeah,
in reality.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
And the way that you go
92%.
over and above to the.
There were only 3 applications out of 57.
55.
yeah, oh no, I'm saying on the original, in the, like, the ones, we had to ask for some corrected budgets. And there were some budgets that needed some assistance, like didn't score, they didn't get full scoring points because they didn't work. As in their event would not actually take place if they off that budget necessarily. But yeah, I mean, it's just gonna look different this year or next year because we get to not ask questions. Because it's putting more
Maybe
on
it's a
them.
more streamlined meeting.
Yeah. So are there any other questions in our application that we feel are repetitive or not clear? And I think some of it just comes down to how people answer questions, because like, I remember reading stuff about marketing and promotion plans. And some were really like, we're gonna do Facebook and this is what we're gonna do, and we're gonna do like it wasn't, we're gonna do social media, it's like Facebook and Instagram and whatever, like everything like itemized and like, whereas others were like, yeah, we're gonna reach out to this community, we're gonna print these posters, we're gonna, you know, a little more narrative to it.
I apologize, I have a hard stop at 5.
We have 2 minutes, guys.
Mhm.
What's important?
So I think in terms of the stuff we have accomplished, which is, having no addendums after submitting an application deadline and altering finance, I think those are 2 significant changes that I think are gonna benefit the application process quite a bit. And I think in terms of just stuff like, maybe changing wording or combining questions, that's gonna have less of an impact, I think, than those 2 major changes.
Agreed.
So I think we should focus on what the effects of those 2 major changes are gonna be and reassess things next year.
I'm for that.
I think we just need to make it really clear at orientation what those changes are. I think having some input at orientations about experience, would really help. And I think Chris and I have to really do our technical review, and try to just catch,
whatever's missing.
yeah.
Because really,
But, no, I'm sorry, you guys, if someone submits something that's missing something, you're not allowed to go to them and say, oh, you're missing this.
Right.
Like,
so
they can't, it's
so what you're
like,
saying is streamlines
Yeah, before- when it gets to you guys look at it and are just like, oh, we're
Well, if
printing this
they
out.
didn't upload such and such document, or
Right.
whatever, then we'll say, hey, your application is missing this.
The 401k letter,
Yeah, that,
503C
The
letter, whatever.
990 the 501c3 letter, nonprofit letter, the
If they're missing their
990s.
attachments, fine.
attachments. Yeah. But if they didn't answer a question, don't
If
worry
they
about
didn't
it.
answer questions, you guys are not allowed to tell them they didn't answer a question. I mean, they should know they didn't answer a question. They are not allowed to submit an answer after the 5 p.m. Shut off.
Yeah, I meant.
Do we still accept it or we do not accept it because there wasn't complete then?
Oh, I think we accept.
Oh, no, we can
Or accept
accept it.
it, okay.
I mean, if they hand in something that's like, all they filled out is their name and how much they're asking for,
They don't
that's
get-
fine. It'll come
That's fine.
across, I'll look at it and go, there's nothing to read. Okay, we're good. You got 0, let's get on to the next.
Yeah.
I mean, if all they submit is a budget with no narrative, I'll look at the budget and be like, I have no idea what you're doing, but your budget balances were, you get 2 points for that. But that does not meet the 18.75. Yeah, because that's, I'm fine for those to get passed through, but I don't mind you asking them for answers.
All right.
I'm such a meanie.
They've got the window between, orientation and due date to ask
Yeah.
questions.
And I think
That is what I meant.
yeah, well, and that and you guys, it's said
They really,
multiple
really
times.
submit it, then
The more chance they have.
the more chance we have to review it.
Legitimately
Yeah.
improve upon it.
But are we just gonna take Even-
I was
so
just
if
like-
they-
I was
If they
thinking-
submit it 2 weeks early before the due date,
Are
and we
you
notice
looking
or
at it?
something,
No, I wouldn't, I don't know, every other grant I know, you like,
what you get is
your
what you
grants
get.
are not looked at, like, all the grants are submitted. They do not look at the grants until, okay, we've reached the
After
we've
the
reached the
The
deadline,
due date.
now we look at the grants.
look at the
So
grants.
no, you shouldn't be looking at them ahead and say, oh, hey, you missed something.
Okay.
Like, people need to be, everyone needs to adult it sometimes.
If people reach out to us and say, I'm struggling with the website, I can't even
Yes.
get it submitted. And, you know, we remind them that it could be done hard copy and brought to us.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is like, you guys are available for them to ask all the questions up until that point, like, until they submit their grant, you know? I mean, they can ask questions after they submit it. If they really want to, but like, yeah, if they got questions on the questions,
What would be the point of asking a question after they already submitted?
who knows, I don't know.
It happens.
Who knows
every
what
once in a
people are thinking? You know what happens? Someone opens their grant up and goes, "Hey, did I answer that right? Oh my god." Yeah. Like, cause how many times
That's
do I
true,
look at
but-
something later on
Alicia,
and go,
thank you.
thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks again for the tour too.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
that
tour
was
was
so
great.
nice to have you
That
come
was fun.
together. So, thank you. Have a good night.
Yep. Any other things you want to discuss or not?
I think we're good.
Thanks, Yvonne, for joining.
Thank you for letting me zoom in.
I will call this meeting to adjournment.
You know, I've always found the top
Bye-bye.
Bye.
really willing to accept all kinds of, offer all kinds of assistance to anybody that
Yeah.
submitting